It was around the hottest month of summer when my old air conditioning stopped working all of a sudden. I got it checked by a repairer, and the guy told me that the damn thing was too old and was non-repairable, along with the lines that its part wasn't being sold any longer. I understood where he was coming from because it was a gift from my mom around 10 plus years ago when I moved out of the house. If I wanted to survive the heat, another air conditioner was a must, but there was a bit of financial condition I was going through, so buying a brand new one was out of the question. To get a cheap secondhand AC, I went to check on Craigslist, and after a thorough scan, I finally found one listed in the electronics section. I sent a few texts asking if it was available, and about 2 hours later, I finally received a reply saying it was. A woman called me for a few minutes later to text and introduce herself as Dr. Mary Elliott. She said I could give a visit in the evening if I wanted to look at it before buying, and the address she gave me was a well-known residential neighborhood, so I didn't think there would be a problem, or the thought of it being a fraud didn't even cross my mind. I gave her a call before heading out, informing her that I was on my way, and she responded with, "Give me a call once you're here." Even at that point, everything seemed normal to me, but as I called her after reaching the address, she didn't pick up the call. I called one more time, but again, no answer. Her number started to give an unavailable tone after the third try, so I decided to wait there for a bit longer before heading back, and as I was doing that, I was continually looking at the house to see if anyone would come out any moment. But when an hour passed by and her number was still turned off, nor did anyone approach me, I figured this was a prank or something. I decided to turn my car around and drive back, but as I was about to do that, there was a knock on the car's door. A man in his late 50s was standing there with a weird expression on his face. I figured him to be probably from the neighborhood, so I slid the door's mirror down and asked him what was wrong. "I've been watching you stand there for an hour, young man. Tell me what your business is here or I'm calling the cops on you." He threatened me, showing already dialed 911 on his phone, and all he needed to do was press the button. "I'm not up to anything shady, sir. I was here to buy an air conditioner from Dr. Elliott." I showed him the chat on Craigslist as proof that I was here for the AC, but the man's expression and response were rather unexpected than what I had imagined. "You're the third person this week to claim this. Whoever's put up that advertisement is fraud because it's been over 3 months since Dr. Elliott and her husband died in a car accident." This news came as a shocker, but he looked genuinely concerned while telling me this, so I believed him. I couldn't understand why anyone would try and impersonate someone dead. What did that person gain from doing so? It was not long after that I found out the reason behind this facade. As I was driving out of the neighborhood, I saw a woman signal me to stop the car, thinking her to be another resident of the neighborhood who was trying to know why a strange car was coming out of there. I pulled over to the side of the road, but before I could say or do anything, 3 armed men with huge builds jumped out of nowhere and pointed their guns at me. I was forced out of the car at gunpoint, and the moment I got out, they snatched my car keys from me. The woman was the one who got in the driver's seat, and the 3 men followed her to take the rest of the seats. I was not so brave to fight off armed robbers and risk getting shot, so watching them drive away with my car before calling 911. After reporting it to the police, I was told to wait there, and not long after, I was met with a cop car and 2 officers in there. They told me to hop in the back seat, and I did while giving them the information about my car and plate number, etc. I also described as they drove in the direction the car went about how these 4 looked. There was one black dude around 6'4" in height, and the other 2 were white, but their height must have been around 6 feet. The woman had short hair, looked Latina, and she had multiple tattoos on her arms and necks. Instead of doing a full car chase with the robbers, the 2 officers radioed it to the officers in the area, giving them the details of the car and those 4 people. After a few minutes, I was dropped at the police station by them to file a report, which I did, and since I had car insurance, I filed a claim on it as well. I didn't want the insurance money though, since I was hoping to get my car back, which I bought after saving for a long time, and there was also a sentimental issue with it, so I was not ready to let it go yet. A few weeks later, I got a call from the police, and they informed me that they found my car 2 states over. Someone had tried to register it at the DMV, and it came up as stolen, and when the cops contacted the man, he said a woman sold it to him for $1,300. The number she used to contact him was also fake, so we couldn't find her. Now the issue was that this man, let's just call him James, was also scammed just as I had been robbed by that woman, so he refused to give me my car back, saying he bought it fair and square. The man suggested that I let him have the car and get the insurance money instead, but I was just as selfish as the other person, and since he couldn't register the car as it was stolen goods, I decided not to be the lifetime victim. So eventually, with the help of the cops, I got my car back, and James filed a report against the woman for a scam. I still sometimes wonder if I did the right thing by not letting him have my car, but again, none of it was my fault either, since I was a victim of robbery myself. At the end of the day, I learned my lesson: to never trust a stranger on the road to stop your car for them, and never to deal on sites like Craigslist anymore.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
This is about the time when I had recently moved to this new apartment and looking for a few secondhand cheap furniture online, when I saw this nice luxury looking couch for just $120 listed on Craigslist. I couldn't understand if it was some sort of scam or something, but if it wasn't, I wanted to try out my luck. I sent a message asking if it was still available, and almost immediately got a reply saying it was. The man gave me his number, and I asked if I could check it first over video call to see if it was legit. He agreed, and a few minutes later he showed me the couch over a Skype call. Everything seemed good. The couch seemed almost unused, as if it was new. And as the man was behaving, it gave the impression that he was in a hurry to sell it off. We decided to meet at the Walmart parking lot the next morning, and since I had borrowed a truck from a friend for shifting, it was going to be a lot easier to pick it up. The next day, as I drove there at the specified time, I noticed the guy was already there with the couch. The deal turned out to be fine. I checked the couch to see if it was the one I saw in the ad, and he assured me that it was the same one. He seemed nice, and even helped me load it onto the truck. After I handed him the cashier's check, he went back to his truck and drove off. I was happy that I got such a good deal on a couch and looked brand new, and as I was driving back, the tire of the truck went flat. That was unexpected, looking at the fact that I changed all the tires the day I borrowed this truck, so it might have been something on the road. Luckily, I had a spare tire, so I proceeded to change it, and once it was done, I started driving again. Around 10 minutes later, I was pulling over on the driveway of my apartment building. The security guard complimented the couch for its look, and I thanked him. After that, I went ahead and unloaded it with his help. But as I was doing that, I noticed it to be heavier than the time I loaded it in the truck. The weight felt as if I was carrying it with a person sitting on it, but I knew that wasn't the case, so why did it feel so heavy all of a sudden? Still, I successfully moved the couch to my apartment, and by that time I was so tired of all the weightlifting that I just laid on it and closed my eyes. I didn't realize when I drifted off to sleep, and as I was half asleep, I felt a push as I fell off the couch. Now I was completely conscious, eyes open wide, looking around to see if there was anyone else in the room other than me, as I was just utterly confused as to what just happened. Thinking it might be due to my sleeping position that I fell off, I got up and walked into the kitchen to get some water to drink. It wasn't even noon yet, but for some reason my eyes continued to feel heavy, so it was better for me to sleep it off. I walked to the bedroom and just threw myself on the bed. Within minutes, I was in the land of Nod. It was around noon when I woke up, and since it was the weekend, I was just going to eat something and go back to bed. As I walked out of the room, it felt like a shadowy figure just disappeared right in front of my eyes, giving me a sudden fright. Thinking it to be my imagination, I rubbed my eyes and went to the bathroom for a shower to remove my drowsiness first. The day just kept getting weirder as my foot slipped in there, but I somehow managed to stop myself from falling as I held on the tap. What in the world's happening today? I thought to myself as I grabbed a towel to wrap around me. That wasn't all. The hazardous situations continued throughout the days. While cooking myself dinner, my shirt almost caught on fire, and the microwave almost blasted if I didn't remove the plug on time. I don't know why, but as I was eating dinner, I couldn't help but think that every menacing thing started ever since I brought that couch. Taking out my phone, I dialed the man's number who sold it to me, but surprisingly enough, his number was turned off. I tried multiple times only to realize that he might have used a burner phone to contact me all that time, and even his Skype account was closed off to prove that I was right. It could be just my imagination. There was no way a couch could cause so many troubles. That's how I tried to reason with myself as I finished my meal. That night, as I was talking to my girlfriend on the call, I felt like I saw a shadowy figure passing into the living room. There was no way I would imagine it a second time. I wanted to confirm my suspicions, so I walked slowly and steadily toward there while asking Grace to stay on the phone with me. Trepidation walked over me, making me freeze as I saw an old man sitting on that couch. He turned to me, and his cold eyes met mine, causing my blood to run cold. Then he disappeared right before my eyes. I was so terror-struck that I couldn't move for a few seconds, but suddenly, adrenaline rushed over me, and I ran to the room, locking the door from inside. There was no way I was going to spend the night alone with that ghost, so I called Mark asking if I could stay there at his place for the night. He lived alone, so there wasn't an issue with him, and the moment he agreed, I grabbed the keys and wallet immediately and rushed outside the apartment. I made sure to turn the light connection off because after whatever I went through that day, I couldn't risk any fire breaking out in the apartment. As I was driving to his house, I made a few calls asking if anyone needed a couch, but there wasn't anyone who seemed to be interested in buying an old couch. That was when I remembered how the couch guy sold it to me with the fake contact information, and I understand why he didn't want me to return that thing to him. He gave me an idea. I still had the pictures he had sent me when I was making a deal with them, so I opened Craigslist, created a new account, and decided to put up an ad. Couch for sale for $140. I removed the haunted part because I wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible, and hit on the publish button.
This library that Mary and I went to became the last library she ever visited, and the one I started to hate. I was in school when I first developed a crush on Mary. She was the girl out of my league, and I was a nerd in school with no chance with any sort of girl. Soon, the school was over, and we all decided to head for college. My college was in the city, and I had no idea what city demanded off, and how tiring it is to live in a city where changes are paced at the speed of light, and every day you wake up to find yourself in a new city. I was not having a good time adjusting in the college, and then during one of the POL science classes, I saw her. Maria was in the same class as me, same college as me, the school crush. At first, I ignored seeing her. I was trying to play cool, but she noticed and called me. We met and caught up since our time together back in school. Weirdly, she wasn't the same like she was back in school, and probably so was I. We caught up and we started talking. And once we knew each other, we started hanging out. And then one thing's led to another, and we began to see each other. And soon we went on our first date, and it was quite amazing. I had no idea that she had always wanted to hang out with me in the school, and knowing that she was a Star Wars fan just made everything better. And we hanged out for a week and binged on the Star Wars. In a few months, as I worked in the cafe, and she worked at the library, we decided to leave the dorm and move out into an apartment. A year later, on our anniversary of first date, she scheduled a date at the library, and we decided to meet up. She met me at the Shakespeare section, and we kissed. And then we moved on to the non-fiction center of the library, where we sat around and talked for a while. But soon, everything turned into chaos when a guy wearing a scarecrow mask entered the building with gun pointed in front of us, and we were more in shock and rendered helpless. I decided to charge the guy, but soon was shot in the hand. And as I did, Mary tried to attack, but he hit her, and I charged him again, and he shot me. I felt blood coming out of my stomach, and sooner, he shot Mary, and he came close to me and said, "If I can't have her, no one can." I rushed to Mary, and she was shot in multiple places. I tried to keep her awake, but nothing. Sooner, he left, leaving us there, bleeding. I called an ambulance, but before they arrived, Mary was dead. She died in my arms. They all branded it the Zodiac murder, but it was not the Zodiac, and I knew it. The moment I recovered, I knew one thing for sure, that it wasn't the Zodiac, but someone who worked within the library with Mary, and I knew that I had to find whoever it was. So I decided to work in the library, and then after months of working, I realized it was the accountant Jerry. He was obsessed with Mary, and even tried exploiting her. He admitted it to all while having a drink, and sooner, I knew what I had to do. And I realized that to play it right, I needed to have the full proof of plan and evidence of charges the man. Without it there was nothing that I could really do. Involving the police was no good since they already had closed the case and branded it in the list of the Zodiac murders. Cracking Jerry wasn't easy. All he did was just admit to assaulting Mary once. He never confessed to murdering her, and he had no clue to who I was. So there was the doubt that maybe he wasn't the killer, even though he cleared all the checkboxes of the killer. My next suspect was Mary's boss, Christopher. I had him in the doubts from the very first day. He was very supportive of me joining, and also very defensive about it. And what made it more suspicious was that he knew about Mary and I being together, and he even knew that I got shot in the stomach. So there was my doubts about him being the killer too. The biggest confusion that I had was that they were both on top of the lists of suspect in Mary's murder case, but I wasn't sure who did the act. I was determined to do whatever it takes to get rid of both of them, and I very much wanted to do it in the most legal way it was possible. But the door closed when I appealed the department to open the case back on. The police refused to open the case file since there was no evidence connecting the suspects to the murder, and the AMO was that of the Zodiac killer. So opening up the investigation would be too much work for the police. I was alone in this search of justice, and seemed like I was the only accountable for seeking the justice, and with that, I had the opportunity of seeking it the way I thought it was suitable. I was having the best time of my life in college when it all happened. Mary was gone, and I was in the trauma of losing her, but what helped me was the need for justice, so I worked my ass off to make sure that I figure out the culprit who did this and make sure to have my revenge upon them. But I was confused as to who was the one, if it was Christopher or Jerry. I decided to do this on my own and ambush them one by one, and so I did. It was Christopher's turn first. I made sure that he is taken by surprise, and so I did. I made sure that he is caught off guard, and I wore the mask and confronted him as he was closing the library for the day, since only he had the access to the library keys apart from Mary, and it just made it more certain. He was surprised by all of it and had no idea. But as I moved, Jerry came in and he said, "Do you think I don't know what you're up to?" And further, he shot Christopher and then looked at me. "You won't shoot me. If you do, you become me. The evidence is clear, and you will have to run forever. I am not going to kill you because then you will be with Mary. So I am just going to give you a shot, and you can kill me, and then I will be with Mary. So what is it going to be?" I was puzzled, and there was nothing I could do, so I just stood there, not knowing what to do. I saw him leaving the door and looking at me. I left the scene. Sooner, the police was after me. My DNA was all over the place. I have been running from the police ever since. But then again, it is not over yet. There's still more to do. After everything, and running and starting everything new, I still don't believe that I've been caught. And to get caught because of none other than your son.
That time, I was 21 years old. I had recently completed my post-graduation and was working as an event manager. The day this all happened was something that I never expected or planned to do before, but it just happened, and I don't know how to, but leave it. Coming back to the story, one of my friends and also my colleague at the office invited me to his engagement ceremony. In fact, we were best pals even from our school times, so there was no way I could have rejected his offer. I just hugged him and said that I will definitely come along with all our other school pals.
The ceremony was scheduled 4 days from then, so I started my preparations in advance. On the day of the reception, we all reached there. It was a resort which was a little far away from the town area and was almost covered by forest on the 3 sides. It was the night of the ceremony, and of course there was no doubt that the celebrations were at its peak. I could see more than 200 people were there, and there was a lot of noise. I and my friends went in and wished my friend a better life ahead. After that, we searched for the bar counter and went there to have some alcohol. It was like we were bachelors enjoying our full swing. We drank, but not that much. We wanted to be in our senses, so we controlled ourselves, and I asked my friends if anyone wanted to smoke. We all were pals from the same pot, so they all agreed. There were a lot of people there, so we decided to go out into the trees and walk a little while smoking. So we went outside into the woods, but not too far. I pulled the cigarette packet and lighter from my pocket and offered one to all my friends. We were 7 in total. While smoking, I felt like nature's call, so I walked a little deep from there to pee. After 2 quarters, I was feeling a little dizzy. I got a little away from my friends and started to pee. While I was in the process, suddenly, scream-like noise. It felt like some kid was crying. At first, I thought I was drunk and maybe too much that I was hearing different sounds. And the second thing that I thought was, why would a kid come here deep into the woods this late hour? I decided to ignore it and walk back, but again, I heard the same noise. This time, I was sure that this wasn't my imagination. That noise was for real. I got conscious and skeptical. I stepped forward in the direction of the friend, but a friend of mine came walking behind me and asked me to come back. I told him what I heard, but just like me, he also thought that we were overdrunk. He came to me and started to pull my hands to walk back to others, but all of a sudden, the same voice repeated again. This time, I was not the only one who heard it. My friend also felt it. This time, I was 200% sure that there was some kid in the woods now, and all my other friends also arrived there. We both told them that there was someone in the woods not too far from us, but they all insisted that it could be some wild animal that we might get into trouble. But I was sure that what I heard was not some wild animal, but it was like some child screaming, and I insisted on going and looking for it once. My friends were not in the mood to leave their enjoyment, but ultimately, we all decided to go and check for once. So I and my friends started to walk in the direction of the noise. On the way, we all picked up some sticks in case we needed if we confronted some wild animals. It was immensely dark, and not everything was clearly visible, but we kept on moving slowly. After reaching a point, we heard the noises being louder for once, and from the moment everything was totally quiet. It was like a pin-drop silence, excluding noise from our footsteps. After reaching a spot, we saw something, but it was not clear. I took the lighter out of my pocket and turned it on. Believe me, what we saw next shook us to the core of our souls. There was a young girl who seemed to be about 6 to 8 years old, lying completely naked, and there was blood stains on her body. Her private parts were not fully grown yet, even though they were bitten. She was lying unconscious behind the bushes. Suddenly, we heard a little commotion like someone was running from there. My friend threw the stick in his hand in the same direction, and it was right on target. We ran there and saw a cop who was about 35 or a little older lying there. Suddenly, I noticed his hand and his lips. There were blood stains on them, and right that moment, we understood everything. I just went to him and pulled him up by his collar. I took him to the little girl who was lying there, and one of my friends was attending her. After checking her, he confirmed that the little girl was already dead. I got furious and slapped him. I shouted at him and asked him, "What have you done, you beast? Don't you have humanity?" He held my feet and started pleading for mercy. This was the first time in my life that I saw a cop getting on his knees and pleading for mercy, and he should be. What he had done was completely unforgivable. I looked at the girl's face and almost cried. Her face was so innocent, and she was not even mature enough to understand what was going on with her. I was filled with rage. At first, I thought to call the cops, but he was one of them. And what if he played in front of them and trapped us instead? He would definitely get bailed out and target another little girl like her and rape more kids. All these thoughts started to increase my rage to its peak, and I don't know why, but I pulled the stick from my friend's hand and I slammed the beast's head. And this didn't end there. I kept on slamming him till my friends came and stopped me. They pulled me away from him and started shouting at me, "You've gone crazy, he's a cop. What if he died? We all would be behind bars," and blah, blah, and blah. They lectured me one after another, but I was not in the mood to listen to them. One of my friends went running to the cop and checked him. He was dead. I smiled and said he deserved that. My friends understood that there was no point in lecturing me now. The only option was to dispose of his body as soon as possible. One of my friends asked others to put some leaves and sticks on his body and burn him with the lighter, and he took me to the car and then drove me back to his apartment. I was totally in a different situation, and after reaching there, I don't know how, but I slept. The next day, I woke up and remembered all the incidents that happened tomorrow. Now, I was feeling scared. I knew I hit that cop badly enough to die. I called my friends and asked them about the situation and what happened after I left. They told me that they had disposed of his body and there was nothing to worry about now. They also asked me to destroy my SIM card and purchase a new one for safety in advance. I did what they asked me to. The next day, some villagers who were roaming into the woods found the body of the girl and the cop, also who was already burnt, and called the cops. They took his statement about what they saw and everything, and then took the bodies of the little girl and the cop for further testing. A few days later, the little girl's death was in the local news, but the title was something that we never expected. They gave the title that "How a Cop Lost His Life Trying to Protect a Minor Girl from Being Raped." We were shocked that the real villain of the story was being seen as a hero, but there was nothing we could have done. You all can call me a murderer, but to this date, I don't feel any regret for what I did. He really deserved that, and he paid for what he did. Now everything is up to you all. You decide on your own what I did was right or not.